Hi there, everyone. My name is Christian Nix. If you're just finding the Pivot protocol or the IBS protocol for the very first time, welcome. In this very short video, and I will try to keep it short, I want to address one of the big questions that I get week in and week out. It's a natural question that most people are going to have discovering this very old, very ancient healing system that is so very, very, very different from anything in modern medicine. Now, if you've been sick with any kind of digestive illness, and since that is my specialty, I'm only really talking about very serious, long-term, chronic kind of digestive conditions here, whether that's reflux to IBS, all the way in between, right? All of the various things that make up serious digestive imbalance. One of the things you're going to wonder about is, well, why would this approach be so valuable? Why can't my doctor help me? You probably already figured out that your doctor can't help you or isn't helping you, or that in fact, in most cases, right, you end up taking enough pills from modern medicine, you actually end up a lot worse off than before. And I explain why this is so inside the protocol, so I don't want to cover that here in this video, but you have to understand something about the modern medical system and how it's geared toward emergency situations, and then extrapolate out, well, they're giving you pills for short-term relief. The problem with that, of course, is that chronic digestive illness is chronic. And anything you do to try to make it better in the short term at the expense of the imbalances that are already in your organs is not gonna end up being your friend. That's actually gonna dig the hole deeper. So the phase 1 material in all of my stuff is, when you're in a deep hole, stop digging, right? I mean, obviously, there is real wisdom to putting a stop to any damage that you're doing to yourself. Don't make your condition worse. And most of these pills from modern medicine will make your condition worse, whether that's acid blockers, antispasmodics, right, antidiarrheal medications, laxatives, steroids, go down the list, right? And you're going to find out that there's almost nothing that your doctor can give you, right? So it's like there's a certain wisdom. Don't blame your doctor and don't blame modern medicine. Get smart about healing yourself. Now, the question I want to address in this video for everybody, with all of that as a preamble, is why most people with chronic digestive problems will inevitably end up having more than one type. The way I've set my material up is to introduce you to the various imbalances that tend to occur in chronic digestive illness. And we talk about those in terms of, right, if we graphed it out, it would be heat, cold, right, which is a lack of function. When your organs get exhausted, we say that one specific organ gets cold, right, but that's like a technical term, meaning that it's exhausted, it can't get up and go, right, it's too tired to do its job. And then dryness and dampness if you graphed it out, right, on the x-axis, so to speak. So hot, too cold, too dry, too damp. Okay, these are the 4 primary imbalances that we're trying to address in the protocols. And most people will identify with one. Not everybody, but most people will identify like, yes, I absolutely have liver reflux or cold IBS, or right, whatever the case may be, right? If you obviously have symptoms of dryness, you know that you have symptoms of dryness. It's not something that you have to overthink. It's something that's really built into your daily situation, and so that you're aware of it day after day after day. That's what chronic illness is. That's what chronic disease does. Is you end up behind the 8 ball, so to speak, because one thing has gone radically out of balance. Now, here's the second level thinking on all of this. You won't have one for very long. Right? If you have one imbalance, you actually have multiple imbalances. Why? Well, let's think about this logically for a second, okay? And let's sort of walk down the road of what happens when one of your organs or a part of your pivot goes out of balance, and the effects that one imbalance will have on your other imbalances, okay? Because you very quickly realize that in chronic conditions, the important thing that I'm teaching you, the important thing that you're learning, the thing that makes this so much more effective than think about your doctor is focused in on, okay, you know, you have too much stomach acid. Let's just treat one small part of your digestive system. And then naturally it ends up making everything else worse, because that's not how chronic conditions are. If you have one imbalance, you have multiple imbalances. It's inevitable. And you might not be aware of it, right? I mean, if you're coming to all this for the first time and you took my quiz, say, and you figured out like, yeah, I have this type. Okay, but what else do you have? Because all of those, each of the single imbalances is tied to and creates and will be related to and causative of, or in some way, right, influential of all of the other types of imbalances as well. How could it be any other way? Of course your organs work together. Think about it again, like go back to the reflux example. Your doctor blocks your stomach acid, and then what? That's not going to have an effect on your other organs? If you don't have stomach acid, your spleen now has to work much, much, much harder. Okay? And if your spleen's already exhausted, well then all of your spleen symptoms just got worse. Now your spleen isn't some organ off by itself. It's connected to your, specifically you get problems in your intestines if your spleen is beat down. So what happens to your intestines? When dampness and food stagnation build up in your intestines, here's the genesis of IBS, right? Well, what happens then? Your liver gets hotter. Okay, well, what happens after that, right? Heat creates dryness. So you create now heat and dryness along with spleen weakness and dampness. So all four of these things will spin out of control. It's almost like no matter where you start, it's like a flywheel, right? You have one imbalance and then the whole thing just spirals until it breaks itself apart. And this is how you spiral down into very, very serious chronic long-term digestive problems. Okay, and what we're doing in these protocols is breaking that cycle. So let me just cover it again here, because I want to make sure you're very, very clear. I talk about this in the protocol itself. I explain this over and over and over because I want the logic to really sink in. What you're trying to learn in all of this, your goal in learning this protocol, no matter what your condition is, okay, whether you're coming to me with IBS or reflux, it doesn't matter what you have. You're trying to internalize the logic that I'm teaching. When I say internalize, you can use this logic to treat yourself. You start making decisions based on a logical understanding. I have this liver heat thing going on, but when I do things that get heat out of my liver without damaging your spleen, then my spleen recovers. Then I feel more nourished, then I'm less fatigued. Then I can do a little exercise. Then I can, right, et cetera, and all of your symptoms start to recover. So just like when you get sick, right, you spiral out of control, bigger and bigger imbalances tend to occur. When you fix one thing, you start to fix everything until we bring you back to this balance point. Okay? Does that make sense? That should make sense, right? If you're watching this, I'm imagining that you're nodding your head. Okay? But because all of your organs are linked together, and because this is one of the big, big pieces that modern medicine does not, it's not that they don't know that your stomach is connected to your intestines, it's that they act like that's not true. When you give a pill that interrupts something inside your body, something as necessary as, right, as necessary as, say, stomach acid, of course you are causing troubles in other parts of your digestive system. There's no way you can get around that. So when you do that short-term kind of quote-quote solution, right, which is not a solution at all, you're putting pressure on the other parts of your digestive system, the other parts of your pivot, that then have to make up for, right, the lack of proper function, in this case, in your stomach. Okay? So why, if you have one imbalance, do you have more imbalances? Well, it's obvious. If you're following along what I'm saying, once one organ goes out of balance, it puts pressure on every other part of your pivot. Okay? So the example that I give in the protocols is, look, for most adults, the main primary cause of a lot of digestive illness in adults, and it's almost guaranteed to be there, is too much heat in your liver. Why? Because, right, to be an adult is to be stressed. Stress is metabolic heat. When your metabolism has to work harder and harder to keep you going because you got to pay the bills, you got to take care of the kids and the wife and the family and all of the things that go into being an adult, right? You're a mom, you're working hard, you got multiple children to care for and all the rest. That's stressful, okay? There's no adult, there's no properly functioning adult who's not dealing with stress, okay? And if you are an adult, of adult age and you're not dealing with stress, why not, right? You should be busy, being stressed and working hard. It's the primary condition of adulthood for your liver to be going out of balance. There's even a saying, it's a sort of canonical statement in Asian medicine. In adults, blame the liver. What the statement means is, in chronic conditions, in people of adult age, your liver is going to be overheated. You can't get it out alive without that happening. Okay, it's guaranteed to be one of the primary imbalances that's going on. Okay, so if you know that, then what happens next? Well, it puts a lot of pressure on your spleen. A lot of pressure on your spleen to keep performing because, think about it, your metabolism's going up, which means your body's running harder and harder, which means you're burning in more and more resources. Where are you going to get the fuel to replace that? Food. That's primarily how we replace our resources. So you eat more food, but your spleen is already tired, right? Your spleen is already weak and overwhelmed. It's like got run over by a truck. So the hotter your liver gets, the weaker the spleen tends to become. Okay, well, what happens when your spleen gets weak? Well, the first thing that happens is dampness is produced, right? Maybe not the first thing. The first thing is you start getting fatigued. You start getting that, right? You start getting acid and bile coming back up because food is not moving through your intestines. If it gets stuck in your intestines long enough, right, you end up with, right, IBS, right? It irritates the inside of your intestinal lining when food and waste get stuck inside you. Okay? But the reflux, the bile, acid, right, all of this coming back up because it can't go down. There's a lot of stuff that's stuck in there because your spleen can't deal with it all. I talked to a client recently, and I was trying to explain this to her. I was like, how do I illustrate this? Well, last year during the, and if you're watching this from another country, the U.S. Postal Service absolutely exploded last year. If you're a federal worker, apparently you don't have to work. And I'm not making fun of these people, but like if you run a private business, you don't get to call in sick just because the world's shut down. Like we work, okay? But if you work for the government, you can demand money and not show up for work and all the rest. And the people who did continue working at the post office were completely overwhelmed. Imagine being the guy or the woman who has to sort mail at a facility where none of your coworkers are coming in to help. Well, you're completely overwhelmed. That's your spleen. When you're sick, that's what your spleen is. Your spleen is the person who didn't have the luxury to not show up for work because when food comes in, your spleen's got to get working, right? Your spleen has to get cracking on what to do with all of that. And it's trying to assimilate nutrients and package waste and send waste into your intestines. And when your spleen is overwhelmed, it can't do all the work that it's supposed to do. So you end up with this big backlog of work, right? Of food and waste that gets stuck inside you. Okay, so what do you do about that? Well, you get sick primarily. That's what happens. Okay, so you can see very quickly imbalance in one organ, causing imbalance in another organ, causing another imbalance, right, in your intestines in this case, food, stagnation, dampness, mucus, phlegm, etc. And then that also, I'm just giving you one example here, right, but this is a common way that this spins out of control. And then all the dampness causing more heat, which causes dryness, because heat always causes dryness, right? If you leave your swim trunks out in the sun, and the sun is hot, it dries it out, right? So heat gets rid of moisture out of your body. But the same thing is true. There's a relationship between dampness. The more dampness you get in your intestines, the hotter your liver becomes. And the hotter your liver becomes, the more prone you will be to symptoms of dryness as well, okay? Which starts to become very, very difficult. Picture this like a great big knot, right, that you have to untie. It's a very complex knot to untie. It's the old Gordian knot, right? It becomes very difficult to untie all of these conditions. That's what you're learning in these protocols. You're learning how to deal with, effectively, all the different imbalances at one time. Now, think of how different that is to anything in modern medicine, right, where it's a very reductionistic, like they're looking at it through this tiny, tiny lens and trying to figure out, like, where is your problem? Oh, look at this, you have H. pylori. It's like, but who cares about just one thing? We need to see the whole picture and deal with all of the imbalances in this entire space at one time, okay? So if you feel like you may have more than one type, you do, right? Chances are you do. There's no real-life patient who's not going to develop multiple types. But don't worry, that's not a problem, right? I got you covered. Get through the protocol and you'll see that at every stage you're learning how to deal with all of the different imbalances. And look, you may not have all of them at a given moment in time. Maybe you only have 3, and like dryness symptoms aren't part of your presentation. Okay, no problem. But if you develop symptoms of dryness, you'll know exactly how to combat it, okay? Because I'm teaching you how all 4 of these imbalances tend to go together, how they influence, how they create one another, and what to do to get yourself out of that dilemma, okay? That's what I want to share with you in this video. If you haven't gotten started on the IBS or pivot protocol, why not? If you're watching this video and you're on my list and you're getting information from me, what do you have to lose? This is one of the real revolutionary things about treating chronic conditions. It's absolutely unknown in our culture, and the more is the pity, right? As I age also, and I continue to help people through their chronic conditions, there's just tens of millions of people running around suffering from chronic internal, usually digestive illness, because at some point or other, right, all chronic conditions, internal conditions, will affect digestion. All chronic conditions will at some point become chronic digestive conditions if they don't start out that way, right, which for most people they do. So, where are you going to go for help on something like this? Your doctor doesn't know this. Your doctor doesn't know anything about it. The reason I know that is because I spent years in hospitals trying to teach doctors about this other system that helps people heal on their own. And it's a long story, right? But in the last analysis, nobody cared, right? They want to do what they want to do, and their system makes a lot of money for certain people, and that's just how it is, right? You have to respect that that's what they care about. And the good news is you found this, which means you're in a position to take your healing into your own hands. Nothing I teach you is dangerous. If you follow the instructions and you look at everything that I'm trying to share with you, it's completely safe. I've taught this to children, young people, they're as young as 8, 9 years old can use this information. So if you're a mom and you're dealing with a child with bad digestion, it still works, right? It's still very, very capable of helping young people, all the way up to 70, 80, even I had a 91-year-old write me in. Oh my God, this changed my life. I wish I found you 40 years ago so I wasn't sick my whole adult life. Okay? Don't let that be you. Get started. Get started and get through the material and apply everything you can, right? You can feel better very, very quickly if you start putting these principles to work. And once you know this, it's yours for life, right? You can be well again for the rest of your life. What a great goal. What a great achievement that would be for most people. I know because I went through it. I went through it myself. And boy, it was miserable. So I want that for all of you guys, that you bring yourself out of this. And that's why I'm here to help, and that's what the protocols are created for. Okay? I hope you go for it. Thanks very much. I'll talk to you again in the next video here.